Hi, we're Mobile Network Comparison, and this is our review of the Lenovo A850. We've got plenty more mobile phone reviews coming, so if you've got an idea for which handset you'd like us to cover next, please leave a comment voting for your choice. We've really put this phone through its paces, as we've been carrying it around with us as our main handset for the last few months now, to get a taste of what it's like to use on a daily basis. The A850 is the latest and greatest in Lenovo's roster of mid-range Android smartphones. We've previously reviewed other A-series phones, including the A789 and most recently the A820. Each new edition has offered incremental enhancements. So, for example, the A789 was all but identical to the A780 that preceded it, apart from a few factors, such as increasing the number of cores, the addition of a front camera, and bumping up the Android version number. The A820 came out in March last year, and we were really impressed by it. It provided perhaps the most substantial increase in technical specifications by jumping from dual-core to quad-core, as well as doubling the amount of RAM. It stuck with the 4.5-inch screen form factor, but nudged up the resolution, giving it the highest pixel density in the entire A-series. The only thing we didn't like about the A820 was that Lenovo got rid of the front camera as well as the flash, but it was still an amazing phone for the price. Next in the series was the A830, which was, just as you might predict, a slight improvement upon the A820. It came out a few months later and had exactly the same chipset, but the screen size was bumped up to 5 inches even though the resolution stayed the same. It also got a slight increase in battery capacity to cope with the bigger screen and Android 4.2.1. But here we are with the A850 in our hands. How does this improve on the previous editions? The way we see it, Lenovo are aiming at a model of consistent marginal improvement that Apple have mastered. So the A850 doesn't aim to be a radical Kuhnian paradigm shift. It's basically just a clone of the Samsung Galaxy Note 2, and Lenovo are simply slowly but surely nudging things forwards and upwards with each incremental release. So you could say we aren't looking so much at the dissolution of the Ptolemaic system, or a new relativistic way of explaining Newtonian physics. Simply, Lenovo are pushing things forward by replacing the 1.2 GHz Core A7 quad-core CPU with a 1.3 GHz processor, and instead the screen size has been bumped up from 5 inches to 5.5 inches, while the Android version has gone up by the tiniest of notches from 4.2.1 to 4.2.2. But let's forget about raw specs. How does this actually work as a phone? The form factor is pretty standard for Lenovo. It more or less looks like a scaled up version of the A820 or A830. Don't be deceived though, the extra screen real estate on this 5.5 inch model really does make a difference in multifarious ways, and we'll go into that a bit later. While the phone still has the same smooth glistening back and metallic edging, the extra half inch makes all the difference.
That's what she said.
No, but seriously, this is a completely different phone from the A820 and even the A830, and the display really is humongous. The hardware layout is pretty standard for Lenovo. On the front, we've got the usual microphone and speaker, proximity sensors, and a VGA resolution front-facing camera. At the bottom of the device are 3 soft keys, including the now familiar Lenovo Clover pattern in place of the home key. It's just a shame that these buttons aren't backlit. In terms of physical buttons, Lenovo have stuck to having a single power button at the top of the phone and a volume rocker on the right-hand side. This works well, although we're more used to having a volume key on the left-hand side and a power button on the right. The edge is completed with a 3.5mm headphone jack at the top, and the now ubiquitous micro USB slot at the bottom of the phone. The reverse side looks professional, in that it's stylish but with no real flair to speak of. There's a minimalist Lenovo logo, as well as the back camera and flash, and a small speaker grill at the bottom of the phone. Underneath that unassuming cover are the gory innards of the device. This being a Chinese smartphone, we have the usual dual SIM slots, both of which take standard SIM cards, and only one of which can handle 3G speeds. The battery is large, although we honestly would have preferred something a bit bulkier, as it only packs in 25-50 mAh. It still lasted easily one day of normal use in our experience though. Of course, there's also a micro SD card slot for expanding the internal memory capacity. Speaking of which, you only get a measly 2 GB of free space, which really isn't enough in this day and age, so you'll need to use third-party tools to move apps and games to the SD cards to make room. In terms of raw performance, the A850 does not disappoint. We've already posted a full benchmark video and even compared it to the Galaxy S2, which it completely obliterated. The 1.3 GHz quad-core processor really makes a difference, as does the Mali GPU, and it has to be said that the hardware inside this phone is pretty outstanding. With Antutu scores easily over 16,000, it's hard to fault the performance of the A850, and it can handle most demanding 3D games. But despite the power under the hood, our major complaint is that the screen is a massive disappointment, and we really cannot emphasise that enough. We're not just talking Godfather 3 type letdowns in that it didn't really quite live up to the previous editions, or even the level of disappointment when you find out that Santa Claus is really your parents just sneaking around. We're talking serious, underwhelming, capital T trauma. Even worse than when you're hungover and all you want is a nice cup of tea, but your freshly brewed cup is ruined by off milk and there's no way you're going to be able to get dressed and schlepped down to the shops for more. Its poor resolution just simply looks crap and dated, and the more we use this phone, the more it got to us. Especially after getting to play around with some of the 1080p Full HD beasts that are doing the round these days, it's just such a wasted opportunity. We've never been particularly quick to complain about being able to see individual pixels and screens, and we're never massively blown away by Retina displays, but the poor resolution of the huge screen on the A850 is so bad, it's just simply distracting, and that's no good at all. In terms of software, we're still as impressed as ever about Android Jelly Bean, so won't go into too much detail about all the benefits and features it offers. Unfortunately, Lenovo haven't been kind enough to produce a purely stock experience and have added plenty of their own apps and tweaks to the phone. Some of these, such as Lenovo Power, are genuinely useful and enhance the experience, while others are not so well received. Lenovo seem to have skinned every aspect of the core Android experience, including the Play Store, the Fire browser, and the weird way they've laid out all the different settings options. Somehow they've even managed to change the loading animation that applies to every single app. A nice touch we did appreciate was the way that notifications have their own separate drop-down arrows that allow you to tweak them individually, and Lenovo have also included some nice ways of customising themes, icons, animations, etc. in the launcher. But we would have really liked to see a proper quick settings interface, which is sadly non-existent in the A850 out of the box. All the apps we tried worked pretty seamlessly, including the camera, which has some nice on-screen display overlays providing you with extra information, and it also has a really brilliant burst mode feature that allows you to take up to 99 shots in quick succession. Having said that, the quality of the camera itself is pretty mediocre, even though it's pretty standard compared to other Lenovo phones. There's only a 5 megapixel sensor on the back, and the images are slightly smudged out when fully zoomed in, and the low light performance still leaves a lot to be desired. Although there doesn't seem to be any image stabilisation, we were impressed by the incredible lack of shutter lag, and the f2.8 aperture is pretty sharp in sunlight. But the video performance is also really poor, with 1080p videos seemingly just scaled up from 960 by 540 resolution. No good at all, and the front camera, it does do the job for video chats and selfies, but the quality is the bare minimum, and you're left wanting just a bit more. Other things that disappointed us about this phone was the fact there's no magnetic compass sensor, even though not everyone's got a use for it. Another thing is that the phone doesn't currently seem to support USB on the go. Overall though, there's no denying that this phone offers incredible value for money. Until every phone has a dual SIM slot, we won't stop raving about how useful this feature is, and it does make a really big difference, especially due to the physical size of this particular model. Once again, we're also loving the scheduled power feature in the settings menu, which lets you automatically turn your phone on and off at specific times. And there's nothing else to say, but this is a great phone and a worthy successor to the A820. Despite all the little flaws and niggles, there's no denying that it blows away most of the competition in terms of value for money and sheer performance. If you think you can deal with the low resolution screen and won't be using it as your main camera, then you'll be more than satisfied with purchasing the A850. In summary, it might not be the best Chinese smartphone ever, but it's certainly one of the best 5.5-inch models and deserves to be the flagship of Lenovo's A series. So thanks for watching this review. We really hope this helps you make your mind up about whether you should buy the A850 or not. And so if you found it useful, please go ahead and show your support by hitting the thumbs up button below. We have seen all your messages about making a really simple, easy to follow ROM install tutorial, and we promise that's coming really soon. So hit that subscribe button to make sure you're the first to hear about it, and don't forget that this also enters you into our free giveaway for an iPhone 4S.